The question I get asked the most is, what camera should I buy? In today's video, we're going to take a close look at the Sony FX30, compare it to the Lumix S9. I'm also going to be talking about camera limitations. These are the limitations that matter the most to me. So I'll share with you what you should be looking for when you are considering purchasing a new camera, what those limitations are, and also what I do to overcome them. So lots to cover today. Let's get started. This is the Sony FX30. It's paired with the Sigma 18 to 50mm f2.8, and this is the Lumix S9 paired with the Sigma 28 to 70mm f2.8. This is an E-mount camera, and this is an L-mount camera. The FX30 is an APS-C camera. It means it has a smaller sensor size than the Lumix S9, which is a full-frame camera. What I do like about both of these cameras is that the Sony cameras all have an E-mount, so you can use APS-C lenses, but you can also use full-frame lenses with your FX30. Lumix has gone with the L-mount system. This is also a Sigma lens, but what's nice about this is if you are using the S9 as a smaller size camera to, let's say, the S5 II or the S5 IIX, then you can use the same lenses for all of Lumix's cameras. So here's the size comparison. They're both nice and compact. Their bodies are nice and compact. Now, because this is a full frame camera, this is the S9, then the lens is just going to be a little larger in size. This is, again, the 28 to 70mm, which is really close to a 24 to 70. This is an ideal focal length that you can use in most situations. With a full frame camera, you are going to get a little bit more of a blurry background with that f2.8 aperture, but you can see that the FX30 is just a little smaller in size because the APS-C cameras can use smaller lenses. Some more physical characteristics is neither of these cameras have a viewfinder. The FX30 does have a hot shoe mount versus a cold shoe mount with the FX9. The FX30 has 2 SD card slots, while the S9 has 1, and you do have to open up the battery compartment to get to your SD card slot. Both of these cameras do have a swivel screen, so if you are into vlogging, or I use these swivel screens all the time, no matter what job I'm working on, both of these cameras do have a swivel screen, so you don't have to worry about that. If you are looking for a camera with higher resolution, the Sony FX30 can shoot in 4K, but the Lumix S9 can shoot up to 6K, although anytime you shoot in 4K or higher, there is going to be a crop. That doesn't really bother me. I just adjust my framing whenever I'm in that type of a situation. And both of these bodies and lens combinations are very similar in size. The Lumix S9 is going to weigh in at about 2 pounds, 2 ounces, and the FX30 is going to come in at about 2 pounds, 0.9 ounces. So overall, we're looking at very similar weight and size when comparing these two cameras. When it comes to pricing, this is where we're really going to start to see differences stand out. As of the recording of this video, the FX30 body only, brand new, is going to run about $1,798, and this Sigma lens is going to run about $525 for a total of $2,323. The Lumix S9, on the other hand, is going to run body only $1,297, and then this lens, also a Sigma lens, is going to run $889 for a total of $2,186. Both of these bodies and lenses have been around for a little while, so both are available on the used market along with these Sigma lens options. So going the used route is definitely a great idea, especially if you're trying to be budget conscientious. And Lumix is synonymous for having lots of sales, especially during holidays like 3-day weekends or Black Fridays, and they do have a number of body and lens bundles that if you buy everything all together, then they do give you a discounted price. Today we are looking at the S9 and the FX30, but anytime I'm making a camera purchase decision, I'm really looking out for 3 main limitations. The first one is battery life. Like, how long are these batteries going to last? 2, memory. When and how long is it going to take for me to run out of storage for the types of videos that I want to capture? And finally is overheating. Now, overheating is especially an issue when it comes to these smaller size cameras. Now, I mentioned limitations because you should always know whatever the limitations are with your camera, and then just be armed with the information so that you know how to overcome those limitations when you're out on a video shoot or when you're choosing the type of camera that you want to use for a specific job. You definitely want to take a look at overheating as well. Battery life. All right, this is the easiest one to overcome. I mean, obviously you can use the batteries that come with your camera. There's tons of third-party battery options out there. When I'm going on a shoot, if I'm going to be shooting all day, then I know just to take all my batteries with me. If you do want to shoot more continuous style videos, then consider going with a V-mount camera system. And if you're live streaming or if you're using a camera like for Zoom calls, conference calls, things like that, then you can always purchase a dummy battery that plugs directly into the wall. So as far as battery and power limitations, those options really are limitless. It's just a matter of selecting the option that's going to work best in whatever situation you're going to be in. Memory limitations is when things start to get a little more tricky. So the FX30 does have 2 SD card slots, and the S9 only has 1 SD card slot. Now, I think there are 1 terabyte SD card options out there. So really, it just depends on your budget and how much you're willing to spend on an SD card. You can get away with a little more recording time, recording internally with the FX30 because it has the 2 SD card slots. This just means that you can start recording on card 1, and once that card fills up, the camera will automatically switch over to card 2, and you can continue recording. With the S9, well, you're going to run out of memory space internally a little faster. So again, just depends on what project you're working on, and you can purchase the SD cards that are most appropriate for you. If you want to extend your recording time, you can always shoot in 1080p rather than like 4K or 6K. Those 6K file sizes are gigantic. And when it comes to 1080p, I know that a lot of people really prefer to shoot in 4K. In my opinion, this isn't always the most appropriate decision to make, especially if you're shooting video that's like hours and hours long, like a video podcast. But you can always take that 1080 footage, and when you edit, just edit in a 4K timeline. And that way, when you upload it to YouTube or when you share the video, then you're going to get a higher bit rate when you upload to those platforms. And I think the same is true for even Instagram and other video-based platforms. And if you're really looking to expand the amount of memory space that you have, you can also record externally using HDMI. You can record to devices like the A10 Mini Pro ISO and the Rodecaster Video. Both of these devices do allow you to record to an external SSD drive. I have one drive that's 2 terabytes in size, but keep in mind that if you do go this route, there are other limitations to consider that are associated with these devices. So for example, the A10 Mini Pro ISO and the Rodecaster Video only capture and record in 1080 or HD. Even if you record in 4K from your camera, the signal that is sent to these devices is maxed out at 1080p, and therefore if you do record externally to an SSD, you're going to only get 1080p of resolution. But again, if you are recording for long periods of time, it's always easier to really manage and use 1080p files anyway, rather than these gigantic 6K files, because your computer at the end of the day might not even be able to edit those files. So you can see where we're going. There's lots of limitations when it comes to camera, types of devices, and the type of memory options that you do ultimately go with. Overheating is arguably the biggest issue and roadblock that you are going to face when you're recording, especially with these smaller size cameras. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the FX30. You can see on the side here, this is how the FX30 handles heat. It dissipates heat in this camera body out of these external fans. There's some on the side, and you can see there's some on the bottom. Now, when we're looking at the S9, this is a completely closed body. So there really isn't any external fans that you can see on this camera. So what Lumix is doing is it's dissipating heat outside of the body itself. And this is where you're really going to start running into issues. Both Sony and Lumix will warn you before the camera overheats. And what happens when it overheats is there's just an auto off mechanism set in both of these camera systems. So eventually your camera is just going to turn off. And what it has to do then is it has to cool off. And this can take a considerable amount of time. Before the camera overheats and turns off, again, both of these systems will display a little icon on the screen so that you can be prepared. A few ways to avoid your camera from overheating is 1, to shoot in cooler environments, 2, turn the camera off and on during the video shoot. There's no need to keep the camera on if you're not actually shooting video. And then finally, record in 1080p or smaller resolution options. If you shoot in 4K or 6K, then your camera is just going to overheat much quicker. The Lumix S9 can record in MP4 Lite for about 45 minutes, which is their smallest file size option that's available in the highest resolution. So this is at 3.8K, and you will be shooting in 30 frames per second. And then the FX30, I have never run into overheating issues with this camera. So whether I'm shooting 4K or 1080, there's only one time I have run into overheating issues with this camera. I live in Las Vegas, so sometimes I am outside when it's really hot in the summer, and this camera did overheat on me on a day where it was midday, 115 degrees out, and we were shooting on black asphalt. So other than that, haven't had any overheating issues with the FX30. When it comes to the S9, you can record in MP4 Lite for about 45 minutes, which is their smallest file size option, using their highest resolution. And that's just under 4K. It's 3.8K, shooting at 30 frames per second. With this same camera, I can get about 1 hour and 10 minutes-ish if I'm shooting in 1080p. And then if I'm shooting at 1080 at 30 frames per second, I'm able to get about 1 hour and 10 minutes before I start to see the icon flash, which means that the camera is about to overheat. So which one of these 2 cameras is better? If you're shooting shorter videos, like talking head videos, videos for YouTube, or B-roll, then either of these cameras is an excellent option. All you have to do to overcome limitations is to bring spare batteries and SD cards with you that you can swap out during the day. And then also just turn your camera off when you're not shooting. This will keep the temperatures in your camera on the lower side, and you're going to avoid all of these limitations. So again, both of these cameras are great options, but in this case, I would choose the FX30. And really, the only reason why is because I also shoot with the FX3. And this means that the color science on these cameras are all going to match. And then I don't have to worry about color grading or doing a big color edit while I am editing my video. You're going to start hitting these limitations on your camera anytime you record continuously for a very long period of time. That means you are recording to the SD card or cards on your camera. So this means long form interviews. This could be video podcasts. Also, if you're live streaming and you want to record the live stream to the camera as a backup, then that's when you're going to run into issues. When it comes to the S9, if you are looking to record for longer periods of time, I'm actually not going to recommend that you purchase the S9. If you do want to go with the Lumix system, I do recommend either the S5 II, or in this case, this is the S5 IIX. It's not to say that the S9 isn't an incredible camera. It really is. I love this little camera, but because I understand my limitations, I'm just not going to use the S9 on longer shoots. If you do want to overcome all of the limitations that I outlined in this video and save a little bit of money, the FX30 body, as a reminder, is $1,798, and this full frame S5 II body is going to run $1,597. The Sony FX30 is just such a reliable camera, but I'll tell you what, Lumix is really doing a great job at providing a ton of value at an incredible price point. So it's really tough not to add the Lumix line of cameras to your consideration options. Is there anything that I missed in today's video? Is there something else I should be looking at? Let me know in the comments below. Before you head out, don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like this type of content. Thanks as always for tuning in, and I'll see you again in next week's video.